My name is Helen Ward, and I'm president of Kids First Parent Association of Canada. We're at www.kidsfirstcanada.org. It's June 2021, and I'd like to share some concerns I have with you about what's happening in BC and across Canada regarding so-called mature minor consent to medical treatment and the BC Infants Act. So what's happening? Here in BC and across Canada, governments are targeting children with a communications campaign telling them that they don't need parental consent to get healthcare treatment. And also that if the child does not want the parent to see their medical records, that the healthcare provider will not show the parent the healthcare records of the child without the child's permission. You can check this out. This is what they have on the government website and what they've been saying for years now. But they haven't done this communications campaign this aggressively ever before. Well, what are parents' legal obligations regarding their children's medical care? Well, parents are legally obligated to provide for the medical treatment, healthcare treatment of their children. And if you do not provide needed medical care, you can be held criminally responsible for neglecting to provide the necessities of life. So we have a serious legal obligation, and our government is making it impossible or very difficult for us to meet our legal obligations. Is there any history of this? Well, yeah, there is. Canada and BC, pretty much every province, has a long and tragic record of government disvaluing, ignoring, and violating parent-child relationships. We've seen what happens when government decides that it can replace parents in children's lives. If there's extreme situations, of course, we need something to happen when a parent is extremely abusive to a child. But we also know that government, state officials, including medical officials, medical personnel, school personnel, and child protection service personnel, have caused children's death and other serious harms to children. So the track record of the government is not looking good when it comes to children and parents in Canada. How is this being done? Well, in BC, we have a thing called the Infants Act. The Infants Act does not have the phrase mature minor in it at all. The Infants Act, what is this thing? It's a very old piece of legislation. It dates back to Charles II in the 1600s. It was about children's property rights and what to do about children when their parents died. But in the 1970s, in 1973, it was amended, and this section about consent to medical treatment was inserted. Medical doctors wanted this put in because they were concerned about their legal liability if they provided medical treatment to children, to minors. In BC, anybody under age 19 is a minor. At the time, providing abortion or birth control prescriptions to girls was the issue. But it was about doctors protecting themselves. It wasn't about children's rights, parents' rights, or anything else. It was about doctors protecting themselves from legal action. That amendment in 1973 had age restrictions. It was only children 16 and up that it covered. Also, the healthcare provider had to seek the parent to try to find the parent to get their involvement and consent. And it also restricted the healthcare providers to medical doctors and dentists. And then in 1992, in a very sneaky manner, the act was again amended without even any debate at all in the BC legislature. This time, all age restrictions were off. The definition of healthcare provider was hugely expanded so that it includes anybody who's got contact with the child's body or emotions, I guess, because it includes any kind of therapy and any kind of cosmetic interaction, as well as medical, preventative treatments. Anybody who's licensed to provide any of these in BC is now a healthcare provider. Yes, the age restrictions were off. The definition of healthcare provider expanded, and also the previous requirement for the healthcare provider to contact the parent was also eliminated. The Infants Act requires that the so-called healthcare provider inform the minor and be satisfied that the minor understands the nature of the treatment proposed and the potential benefits and risks, and also that they feel that the treatment is in the minor's best interests. Well, in reality, we know that there's not an assessment done in the vast majority of cases at all. Children can refuse or consent to medical care in this doctrine. This has had tragic results. Rena Virk died. Well, she was murdered while she was in government care because she didn't want to live with her parents, and I guess somebody decided that she was mature enough to make that decision for herself. So she was in foster care when she was brutally murdered back in the 90s. Elliot Yurchuk was 16 in 2018 when he died of a drug overdose. His parents had pleaded with his doctor to provide them with his medical information. The doctor had refused, and he died. Another child in 2018, Stephanie Lawrence. She was 15. She had an addiction problem, and her parents wanted her to be in an addiction program, but the addiction counselor people, the healthcare providers in their wisdom, said that if she doesn't consent, she doesn't have to go. We know that, and I've seen personally multiple times, that healthcare providers don't typically conduct any assessment at all. If a child refuses treatment or accesses treatment, what would you need to do to assess a minor's capacity to understand the information and the possible consequences? There's no standardized form, there's no IQ tests, there's no quizzes, there's no check to ensure that they know their medical history or their family medical history. There's no provision to ensure that the child has somebody lined up to attend to them after they have the healthcare treatment. We know some people have anaphylactic reactions to things. People can have all kinds of care needs after having even minor healthcare treatment, but they're not required to provide that. There's no signatures, there's no names, there's no license numbers, there's no contact information. So the healthcare providers are left scot-free to determine that the child is capable of making a decision and understanding it, and they don't have to find out if the kids got follow-up care or anything. This is why children are put at extreme risk by this process. I mean, usually they don't do an assessment at all. The addiction treatment centers will tell you over the phone, without having met a child or laid eyes on them or even knowing their name, that they won't provide treatment to the child without the child's consent. They won't even let the parent know if the child is there without the child authorizing them to provide the information to the parent. So we would say that the Infants Act violates parents' and children's charter rights. They violate children's right to security of person because they put their life at risk. They hurt them, they harm them. They violate their attachment to their parent. These laws violate parent-child attachment, puts parents' security of person right at risk, because when your child is hurt or injured or at risk, then your well-being is also damaged. It also violates parents' liberty right to look after their children as they see fit and to make these decisions for their children. The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled on this issue. It's very clear. The Supreme Court of Canada understands that parents are the ones who make the medical decisions for children unless there's a very unusual and extreme situation where they decline medical care for a child that is needed. Life and death medical care. So it's the law itself, the Infants Act as it is, but also as it's being interpreted with this broad interpretation that you don't need to tell parents what's happening with the kid's medical treatment. So we're intending to prepare for a legal action against the government of BC, be the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, that's promoting this and conducting this, and we'll be seeking legal assistance for that action. You can find out more information at our website, www.kidsfirstcanada.org. Just look under topics and Mature Minor Infants Act. Thank you.